Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler. We're starting our 2026 season. This is our 51st episode, and we're joined by our frequent friend and guest, Ron Rossmann of Be Your Own Hero Productions. So, Ron, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I didn't know it was your 55 episode. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah, we hit 50 in December, and then I took a little couple weeks off, and now we're at 51. So we shall see where we get. Kind of try to make it fun. It's never like, oh, let's do this every week sort of deal. Otherwise, I'd go insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know you do podcasts and all that. I mean, like it's just hard to
Well, we're
get.
trying. Yeah, I don't know if I've reached official status yet. We're giving it a whirl, so we'll see. But yeah,
Yeah,
we do it every week, and it's time consuming to say the least.
right. Well, it's like it's one thing like, oh yeah, let's do this like every so often, but then they're like, oh man, like when you actually sit down, like I have to give up this time slot every week. It's like, yeah, I just can't between
Yeah,
other stuff and my real job and all that. I'm like, no, I'm good. Let's keep it fun.
yeah, agreed.
Um, we've had you on in the past talking about movies, and also just comic book related stuff. But you're here this year to talk about you've got a book coming out. And I feel like the best kind of like softball layup question we could ask any author, any movie maker, anything is like, what is your thing about? So what your book is The Last Road to Hope. So what is your book about?
The story was inspired by my mom's 3-year battle with cancer, and I was thinking about the story while she was going through it, and then after she passed, as part of the grieving process, because I use my creative energies for that kind of thing. Um, and so I wanted to write a story where either cancer survivors or patients were protagonists. And I also had a story off the side that was kind of Lovecraftian. So I combined the two stories together and came up with The Lost Road to Hope. It was originally called 30 Miles. And what it was about was a man, a former, well, a current detective with the police force who's a former veteran who goes to this clinic and this event occurs. He's in stage 4 of prostate cancer, and he's at this clinic, this private clinic, and this event occurs, and the entire world changes, a very apocalyptic event. And all he cares about is getting back to his wife and child, which is 30 miles from the clinic. So the original story was called 30 Miles. And as it developed, it became The Lost Road to Hope because it started to evolve into like an allegory about the struggle with cancer. And the reality is that when you have cancer, you have to craft your own path to hope. Like there's no hope provided
Right.
because with cancer, you're basically being destroyed from the inside out. There are treatments, but you never know how others are going to react. Uh, Sometimes you go in remission, but cancer is always haunting you. I don't know many people who are really truly cured of cancer.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of make your own hope. So I call it, oh, Lost Road to Hope. Basically, this idea of, finding hope in this ridiculously awful situation, and he is forced to do that, but also have this group of other patients who have survived this event kind of tagging along with him and him having to take responsibility for them. At the same token, there's a parallel protagonist named Kayla, and her life has been hell even before the cancer, and she's dealing with this event and kind of having an existential crisis at the same time. And basically, their two stories collide as they take this trek basically back to this man's house to see if he can save his wife and child. And then
Wow.
all the events that occur during that. So it's a very intense story, very Lovecraftian. I love Lovecraft,
Mhm.
and the way he told stories. They were so mind bending. And he was a phenomenal writer. And then I'm also a big fan of Stephen King and the way he develops characters. So you can see those influences in the story. But I really wanted to make something that stuck with you, that after you read the book, it didn't leave right away.
Yeah.
It hung around with you for a
Mhm.
while. And it's told in a really unique way. Every odd chapter, starting with chapter 1, is Alex, the protagonist's perspective. Every even chapter is Kayla, the female protagonist. So each chapter skips so you can see their varying perspectives, and that kind of helps to make those transitions a little easier and also allow you to have two characters giving their first person perspectives on what's happening.
Yeah. No, that's unique, and I want to dive into some of that, but also, I guess from our past conversations, I know that like beyond just like your mother's experience, you've also had other like experiences with people from your time as like doing like the Batman stuff. with like I know like young people with cancers. And do you feel like some of that experience is also kind of like informed some of your like I guess like your feelings about the having
Yeah,
such an illness?
I think the biggest impact was my mom. I can't remember if I was doing some of the more significant Batman charity stuff while my mom was struggling. I'm
Mhm.
sure I was. But I did have several circumstances where um, I dealt with children with Make-A-Wish and a couple of events with children who were at the end of their journey with cancer, where there was very little hope and they were trying to
Yeah.
get some kind of joy. I think three, I remember specifically. Two of them passed. I don't know about the other one.
Mhm.
And one of them passed the day after I visited with them.
Wow.
And when I went with him, he was barely conscious, and I felt kind of awkward because I felt like I was, even though I know the parents were there, I felt like I was burdening this poor
Yeah.
kid who had all. And he saw me, and just for a second, his eyes lit up, and he
Mhm.
smiled and just locked eyes with me for a little bit until the exhaustion took over. But I remember that really hit me. And that's why I love this story so much because I didn't realize when I was writing it, for in all
Mhm.
honesty, Tyler, that it was becoming an allegory about the struggle with cancer. The monsters in these book represent the things that you face
Mhm.
when dealing with cancer and the existential crisis that you go through when you're facing your own mortality, and not just in a life or death situation, which is very quick or sudden, but in a prolonged
Right.
life or death experience. And I'm sure some of those, if they were occurring when my mom was going through it, affected it. But I would say mostly it was my mom because I saw firsthand her go from being this very vibrant woman to hospice. And
Right.
that's one of the hardest things. I know a lot of folks go through it, to watch someone you idolize become, because cancer doesn't leave any dignity. It takes all your
Yeah.
dignity as well as your health. And watching people, and I went through that with my mom and then my cousin, excuse me, my uncle Henry, who was basically like a father figure to me, and several others. And it's just cancer has really kind of ravaged my
Mhm.
family and my wife's family. And it's just been to know that I wrote this book that might give somebody hope. And I remember someone had read the book and let me know when I first self-published it before it got published by a publishing house, told me they had to put it down at first because it was so realistic in its depiction of what it feels like to go through cancer. They couldn't read it in one sitting. They had to
Mhm.
literally, it emotionally hit them, and they had to take breaks.
Yeah.
And as a writer, as an author, you know this, that when you have that kind of visceral effect on people, you feel like you're connecting in a way that goes beyond the eyes. It's like it's connecting with soul, it's connecting with spirits, connecting with emotion, and that's really what you want to do.
Right.
So in a respectful and appropriate manner.
Yeah. When I know exactly what you're talking about. I had someone reading an excerpt of my book recently, and in the book, characters dealing with the death of a parent, and they asked him like, "Have you dealt with a parent dying before?" Because this felt very, very much like that. And I think when you get in that place, like with filmmaking and writing, if you're filming a happy scene, or writing a happy scene, you feel that happiness. Like, oh, this is you might even be smiling and laughing as you're doing this. I mean, what must it be like though? Because you're writing something this heavy. I mean, does that like, do you feel like, did you have to slow down when you wrote this as well? Because like, I can't having to like deal with something
Yeah, it
this
took me a
tough,
year.
you know?
It was, there were moments where I found, for me, this is going to sound really weird, but for me, the books take on a life of their own. And I almost
Mm,
feel like they write through me. I'm not trying to
yeah.
be any kind of mystical or anything. I'm just saying I get
No, I
so
think, yeah, I know the
involved.
feeling. Yeah.
And I found out that, except for one character in the book, I was writing from different parts, facets of who I am. And at first, I thought it was Alex because I wanted to be Alex. Alex is this man who has spent his life being a hero.
Mm,
But I found more and more I identify with Kayla, who is this girl who is just riddled with trauma, more so than her cancer. It's almost like she's fighting two diseases, trauma and cancer. And she's finding her strength, and moving from this oppression of victimhood to something really powerful. And so, yeah. And the thing is, when the original ending of the book I wasn't happy with, and I couldn't get it right. And then one night I woke up in the middle of the night and it just came to me. And I jumped on my computer and started typing. And I'm not lying. By the time I was done drenched, I still weep reading the end.
Mm.
I know it's not meant to be narcissistic or anything, but because the ending is such a powerful thing to me because it's something is expressed that I've always wanted to express in my own soul. And it was like this vulnerability was coming out in the book. And I'm not a big crier. It was just straight
Yeah.
down, Niagara Falls, Frankie, like, they say in Scrooged.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a struggle. It was a labor of love, but there were a lot of tough moments where I didn't think I was going to be able to finish it. I thought I can't keep doing this. There's also a character named Matt who's a pastor, and I challenged the idea of what happens if the end of the world doesn't come the way we think it is in eschatology, right? Because that's a big moneymaker for Christianity. And how would a true Christian deal with an end of the world scenario that doesn't match up with the quote unquote theology
Right.
that they've bought into? And what does faith mean? Is faith about the destination, or about the journey? There's a lot of facets to it. It really is what I like a kitchen sink book. It's like I poured everything into this one because I thought it might be my only book,
Hmm.
and so I'm really happy with it. It's one of the best things I've written to date. So,
Great. Yeah. Well, that the character reminds us. I had a thought pop in my mind. I remember like in The Walking Dead, what the character Herschel, who was like this like southern, very
mhm.
like rural Christian man. I remember there's this line that stuck out to me. It was like I just thought the Christ said the dead would rise. I just didn't think it would be like this.
Yeah,
So it kind of
yeah,
kind of made me think of that.
yeah.
But it's interesting because like I know like there's so much, and we're not going to dive into this because this isn't that kind of podcast. But there's so much like stuff in the world that's like divisive, and I feel like people kind of go in their camps these days. But I mean, I feel like mortality and the experience of like say like cancer, for example, it's something that like everybody can resonate with.
Hmm.
It's a hard topic, so I think it's good that it's something that like anyone can kind of like get behind and sit
Yeah.
down with. You
It
know,
transcends politics, it transcends ideology. The book asks tough questions. And what it does is, if there was an apocalypse, God forbid, it would strip down all that nonsense, the
Mhm.
trivialities that we think are so important would be gone in an instant. And then it's
Right,
just survival and how you preserve your humanity.
right,
And then we get down to what is humanity? Is it, just being there for other people and saving and preserving people? Is it, risking your life for other people? All that stuff, the jersey you wear doesn't matter anymore. The color of your skin doesn't matter anymore. The religion you serve doesn't matter anymore. It's just people trying who are facing the same trial at the same time. And it's very true with cancer, it's the same thing. Cancer is indiscriminate. Cancer
yeah,
is an equal opportunity killer, and it doesn't care who you are or what you believe in. It's going to attack you with the same ferocity and try to take you out.
yeah.
So,
Well, I want to go over a couple of kind of like more nitty gritty writing stuff. And I know we have a mix. I always do like at this point now that I do the show, like I just do like I do deep dives on anything. I like Beatles, vinyl, whatever. So like we're gonna do a deeper dive into writing stuff. So if
yeah,
you're just here for the comic books, I promise this is still interesting. But I'm gonna hang tight with me. So you have a cast of 8 characters. I know you have like your 2 main characters, but what is that like with such a relatively larger cast to make sure that like each one of them still gets a chance to shine?
it's very complicated because I'm a continuity freak.
Hmm.
So, as I'm writing, I don't know if you see, I have a whiteboard on my back. Right now it's work focus, but when I'm writing, I'll strip that and I'll put notes on there so that as I'm writing for one character, I remember, oh, he did this or she did this in this scene, or she has this or he has this trait. How do I make sure that continues? It's not easy, but
Hmm.
if you have a good story in place, because I'm a little bit like King, where King, I believe, writes characters and then wraps them in a story instead of
Hmm.
having a story and then inserting characters.
Right.
And so that's what I do. I make up these characters and then create the situation they're in, which makes it a little easier for me to keep that continuity going. and fleshing out the characters. Also, the characters are either based off of people that I know, in an amalgam, or they're based off of things about me, so I can relate to them.
Mhm.
So they have traits and personalities that I am familiar with. I think the hardest thing is writing for females,
Yeah.
because we don't have that perspective. I mean, we can observe, but we
Yeah.
don't empathize. Because I don't think anybody can really empathize. Anybody can sympathize, but empathize. So I just based it off of females that I had known in my life and how they acted and reacted and influenced my life. Um, and some of the positive things I've seen, negative things I've seen. So using some observation in it, but also trying to really put myself in how would a woman react to this?
Mhm.
Um, and then when you write it, looking at a challenge and going, okay, is this from a man's point of view? Or are you really writing, this is how a woman
Yeah.
might do it? Very few male writers get female characters right. There are them out there. So I think it's the most challenging, and you have to be very careful because most of the time I think females write males from their perspective and vice versa. But that's, I think, the toughest thing for me is writing for female characters and doing it with authenticity. Make it really genuine.
Right. And I know that's been a conversation I've heard in writing in the past few years is that like I think this kind of extreme where you've heard some people say like, well, should X person be writing in this person's perspective because do they know what it's like? And there are some extremes where they say, no, not at all. Like me being a man, I shouldn't write a story that's, from the perspective of a woman. Versus, like, I think if you give it the attention and you're careful, but it takes intentionality. Like, for
Yes.
example, I've got
Yeah.
like in my book, there's like I've got Black Americans in my book, and I cannot speak to the entire. I'm not going to try to speak to that entire existence, mainly because that's not also the point of the character. But you still have to be like careful about it, right? You don't want to lead
Yeah.
to stereotypes. You don't want to assume things. And so I think it just shows like you have to be intentional when you're writing from
Right.
perspectives that aren't your own.
It's all observational. Even even if you're doing studying and research, or you have friends and family who are different races, different religions, different sexes, um, you can sympathize with their plight
Hmm.
and kind of personify it.
Hmm.
But I don't think people truly can empathize. I don't believe in empaths because there's no way that I can know your experiences. I can sympathize with them, but I don't know what is going on inside your heart and your soul.
Hmm.
But I can observe and then not mimic, but observe and then create something around that.
Hmm.
I think intentionality, I think sensitivity, and I think authenticity.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to open yourself up to people criticizing something if it's done earnestly, so that you can go, okay, maybe this is not, I haven't gotten this right.
Yeah.
But there's been historians and biographers who are an opposite race or an opposite sex who've done phenomenal jobs of telling the story of an individual. And I
Yeah.
think it goes back to what you said, intentionality, and I think sincerity are the two things. There can't be an agenda behind it. It has to be done with an integrity.
Yeah.
So
Well, you mentioned criticism with like critiques and all that. I know like part of the writing process is like it's writing can be very solitary, and there's a certain point you need to
yeah.
start opening it up to like other people giving their feedback, whether it's like beta readers and then editors and all that. What kind of advice would you have for people that are kind of in that stage of like, okay, I'm getting criticism. How do I make sure that I'm like receiving this in a way that's going to be useful to me?
So if you're writing for an audience and you want to publish a book, you have to be open to compromise. You have to be willing to listen to your editor. Um, and if you're doing test readings, you have to listen. You have to be able to discern what advice is done with being earnest and what advice is because somebody has a certain perspective, agenda, or whatever. You've got to break those apart. That's the first part. But the biggest part is just being willing to take that advice and that criticism and not be offended. And I think by nature, we are easily offended. I don't think anybody is can say they're not. You can overcome that when
Especially if it's
you're
something so creative. It's like I made
yeah,
this
it becomes your
and
child. Yeah, it
yeah,
becomes a part of you. It can become an appendage. It can be an offspring. It becomes something that you've nurtured and cared for. Some people have written books that have taken years, decades to put together.
right.
And so when they hand it to an editor and there's like, there's I need to make changes, there's such an ownership. It's like, I can't. But
Yeah.
the difference between a published author and a starving artist is that ability to compromise.
Hmm.
And you're writing a book. If you're writing it for yourself, by all means, write whatever you want. But
Do
if you're
whatever.
writing for an audience, you have to appease the audience, and you can't. Your goal is to appease the biggest percentage of that audience.
Mhm.
If you're writing a thriller, you want to be able to, that's why I stay away from the politics. I stay away from all that nonsense. I mean, I may make a social commentary, but I leave it open for the reader to make their own decisions, because then they get the ownership of it. And that's the idea to
Right.
give the reader is putting that cinema in their mind while they're reading your book. And I want to give them that ability to create their own world as they're reading my story, like add their own personality to it or whatever. Um, but it's hard. It's hard, but you got to take that. We re-edited this book. Like when I first put it out, I did 3 or 4 edits when I self-published, and it labored for 10 years doing nothing. When this publisher picked it up, we probably did 3 or 4 edits again.
Mhm.
And there were a couple of things I did argue. Um, and we had, fiery debates, but
Yeah.
in the end, the editor was just trying to create a book that was marketable, and I understood what they were trying to say. And they gave me some, mulligans on it. But these are experts. They
Right.
sell books. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it would be foolish for me, with the expressions, a smart man surrounds himself with smarter people and then listens to what they say. Doesn't
Mhm.
try to micromanage them. And so when a smarter person than I am says, "Hey, Ron, here's some things you could do to make this book better," I'm going to listen.
Right.
So, but that's always been the way, whether it was through managing in the corporate world or when I was a minister for a short time or in my movie making. I always try to be someone that listens. I remember that great Judge Judy statement says God gave you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason.
Right.
I think we all need to listen a little more. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean because you listen, you're going to be swayed, but you got to listen. When I went through seminary, I studied evolution, because I wanted to have science and creationism, wanted to see how they stacked up so that if I debated those topics, I would debate them from a point of credibility. You can't do that unless you know both points of view.
Yeah.
It didn't change my mind, didn't affect my faith. It was interesting, and I actually through that I believe came up in my own mind with a reality of what uh, God's science is.
Hmm.
And I think it gave me a lot of clarity where I wasn't swayed either way. So, and I had good men who were good mentors that helped me with that too.
Gotcha. Well, so with the writing process itself, do you have any sort of like, I know like show versus tell is a very big piece of advice, but is there any just general advice you'd give for either whether it's like literal writing or like characters or scenes?
Right.
Just any
Yeah.
general advice you give to somebody who's
Yeah.
wanting
So
to write?
general, I'm careful with this because like you said, general is the key because everyone writes their own way. And if you have a way you write and it's effective, stick with it.
Mhm.
It'll evolve as you write more and more books. But for me, I write everything. So I don't edit myself. I just write everything. And then after I get done with that big conglomeration of data, I start stripping it down. So for me, the most fun part is brainstorming the idea, getting on the whiteboard, writing the stuff down. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Then the more work intensive part is then writing the putting the muscle on the bone. Writing the story. The most frustrating part is editing that down. But
Yeah.
in the process, you find that as you're whittling it down, you're seeing it's just like with clay or with marble when you're molding clay or chiseling marble, you start to see that really beautiful construct build, and that's what I love. So that's my system. And then of course I get done, it goes in editor now. Don't ever self-edit, by the way. Once you
Yeah.
get done with your manuscript, Do not self-edit because you're gonna one make the same mistakes, you look past them, and two, you're in your echo chamber, and you got to get out of that echo chamber. Echo chamber
Right.
gets smaller and smaller, and eventually will suffocate you. So that's what I do. But yeah, I do my brainstorming, my outline, I write the stuff on the whiteboard. I develop my characters, almost like I used to do in D&D. I
Yeah.
write those characters down, and then I start putting. But typically, like I said, usually I end up coming up with a great character, and they go in a notebook. And
Yeah.
then after I get a certain amount of characters together, I'm like, well, what can I do with this character? And then I also have a separate notebook with all of my story ideas.
Yeah.
And I'll go, oh, I want to put this character in this story, and then that changes the story.
Hmm.
So it's a fluid process.
Exactly. One thing I found myself doing lately, past few years I've really like advanced my writing is like this story that I'm working on is like even like a decade long process. I've done so many rewrites and all this stuff. I found it helpful to like really try to do things to put myself in the character's shoes. I will try to eliminate any like filter stuff. Like I want the reader to be with the character. And sometimes I'll even do things that are like, okay, how can I make sure I'm experiencing this right? So the other day I posted about this on Facebook. My story takes place on Pluto in this in the planet. They sleep on ice mattresses and they use like sleeping bags on top of it. And I was kind of bored yesterday. I was like, oh, there's ice outside. I have a sleeping bag. Let's go see what that feels like. And it sucks. I did it.
Yeah,
I laid down. I was
yeah,
like, it's very cold here. But I was like, okay, I need to go back in that scene and let's write this or whatever. Let's put that word in there. Or like there was like a hostage scene and one of the characters had a blindfold on. And I was like, what does this feel like? I put a blindfold over my eyes. I was like, huh, I can feel it scraping against my eyelashes. It's kind of tight against my hair. And it's kind of
yeah,
cool to put those things in rather than just be like,
yep,
he couldn't see. Okay,
yep,
well, what's that? What is that like? You know?
yep. Yeah, that's the adding the literary soul to a story as opposed to he couldn't see where his eyes felt like they were suffocating
Right,
and
exactly.
it was pulling on the hairs in the back. Those extra things really give the reader also that extra because they don't know what it's like to be blindfolded. I guess as long as you don't do a serial killer book and try to do that,
Yeah, yeah, no, don't do that. Like, as
that would be the only. But
there's limits to this, you know.
yeah, I think that's I've done that as well. I also do a lot of research.
Mhm.
I'm a research hound. I love learning new stuff. And so that's helped me. When we were doing the parts for the veterans, I spoke to veterans about when they felt comfortable about their PTSD and all that and what they went through. When people tell me their stories, the mind just traps on that and goes, "Oh my God." But yeah, and a lot of my stuff, believe it or not, comes from nightmares. I have insomnia, so I do fall asleep. I have vivid dreams. And a lot of my stories actually come from nightmares, and they're so profound that when I wake up, I remember about 80% of them, and I immediately start writing them down or recording myself to get the idea down if I don't have a chance to write. And so, yeah, and when I have those nightmares, I go through whatever the nightmare is because I'm a claustrophobic. I had a family member who used to take great joy in suffocating me as a joke.
Fun.
So yeah, I know what that feels like. I've a lot of my own trauma growing up. I pour into my books. I don't like victim clout. I don't like the victim culture that we have. I'm embarrassed to call myself a victim. I've gone through that stuff. But I want to be the kind of person that overcame it. I want to be the guy that says,
Mhm.
you can make it through this. I can sympathize with you because I've been through it, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I think too much we're focused on the trauma and not how to overcome the trauma and leave the trauma behind. We always have scars, and the scars tell stories, but they don't have to infect or affect the way you move or the way you function.
Mhm.
So, and you look at the people who are in wheelchairs and in the Special Olympics and all who have taken their trauma and done something incredibly positive with it and done something to affect society, culture, history, all that.
Right.
So,
Well, one more thing I want to talk about too with the just like because comparing and contrasting like the different mediums you work in because you've done films and you've done a book with film, you've got a script, you've got actors, you've got you can show a scene without even any dialogue. You can show a lot. Versus with a book, it's like you've got the reader and you've got the text.
mm,
It's not a comic, there's no art. There's just maybe the cover, but besides that, it's just the reader and the text. So what is that? How is that different? you feel like as you're processing writing a book versus,
Yeah,
your
so
filmmaking?
it was a hard transition, and this is for me in the inverse because I was a book writer first. And
Mm,
so book writer, you have to construct everything so when the reader's reading it, they can visualize.
yeah,
With a script, you're compressing everything down because you have a camera that can do that. So you're creating a much more streamlined, a much more agile document. Um, but it's also more formulaic. So writing scripts are not as fun for me as writing books because I can really explore the space with a book. With a film, you've got 90 minutes and you got to make sure everything you do is done in 90 minutes. So you have to give instruction. It's like writing stereo instructions as opposed to something that someone's sitting down and enjoying.
yeah,
So, because if you read a screenplay, you're not going to read that and enjoy that because, like, oh, shot here, block here, all that. In a
right,
book,
yeah,
it goes back to what you said about how it feels to be blindfolded, right? In the screenplay you're writing, he's blindfolded,
right.
and it's up to the actor to play that part. And sometimes you put in the script what the dialogue is, but the direction comes from, them. In the book, you're directing everything as it happens, and you
And
don't
there's
have
more,
the
I feel
chance
like.
to.
Okay,
But
I think there's more like hands also in the film because it's like, okay, if in that my script on the film I say, all right, we're in a warehouse. Well, it's up to the, maybe a producer or a set designer to create that warehouse. It's up to
Mhm.
the director how you frame it. There's so many moving pieces. The
Yeah,
actor versus again with the right, like it is literally just you and the
you don't
editor's
have the
involved, but like
control. Yeah,
no, it's just
yeah, unless you're like me, who's an idiot, and I make my own films and direct them and write them. If you're writing screenplays and submitting them, you could write a screenplay that either gets shelved or someone takes your idea and does something totally different with it.
mhm,
So there is really it's almost like adopting your child out
yeah,
and then giving up all rights to it. A book is much it remains personal from point one to point Z, and
mhm,
you're sharing this experience with somebody. With a film, you may say you're sharing it, but it's really not. You're telling someone what this experience is. They may
yeah,
walk away with something from it, but with a book, you're there together
yeah,
and you're a guide. So and it's much more intimate.
yeah,
And that's why you have to respect it because uh, you're tapping into parts of someone. I mean, film does this too, but I will always say literature does it more because it's so personalized. And you can be mind numb watching a film, right? You can't do that with a book.
yeah.
Um,
You gotta lock in, as the kids say.
yeah, and when you're writing books like this, where you're talking about cancer and you're talking about trauma, you have to be very careful not to use that to
Mm,
manipulate people or be
yeah,
disingenuous because it's almost like you're given this sacred trust with the reader of I'm going to guide you on this and I'm going to do it in such a way that even though you're going to feel the intensity, there's a safety. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? There's rails.
hmm,
And some people can remove those rails in their reading, and that's fine, but that's their choice. But you're giving them that choice. With a
right.
movie, it's just what it is. You can't watch Terrifier and kind of make it abstract.
No,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
you can watch The Shining and it's abstract, but the interesting thing is The Shining was what? A novel before it became a movie. So there
Yeah.
was a lot more to work with. So,
Well, kind of last thing on the book with the literal writing itself, are you more of a like when I go and I write, sometimes I do it from home, sometimes I like to go to like I'll go to a coffee shop, I put my headphones in, I listen to music. Are you a like go somewhere and write? Are you a like music, no music? Like does it no lyric if there is music, is it only like classical or is it like can there be lyrics? Like how do you kind of get in that writing space?
yeah, so break it down into two parts. I write where I can. So when I
Mhm.
was writing A Lost Road to Hope, I was on airplanes, I was in hotel rooms. Whenever I had the opportunity, I was writing. As soon as I had that opportunity. So I don't really have a specific place. But I think now my office is where I do most of it. Music is incredibly important to me. Music is the soul of a movie and it's the soul of a book. And I have my own playlists for different
Mhm.
stories I write. I have a playlist for
Yeah.
this one, I have a playlist for movies that I use because music has such an influence, whether it's helping you build the tempo of the scene, whether it's an energy scene or an action scene, or it's a dramatic scene or a solemn scene. Music really it really puts you in place. And that's why it's such a big part of religion, if you think about it, because music is such a big part of it because the music kind of moves you to a certain point emotionally. And that's what music does for me when I'm writing. It moves me to those places I need to be. Because when you're writing cold without it, it almost starts to feel lifeless
Yeah.
and hollow. But when you add the music, oh, okay, and you get that rhythm, and you really feel it. So as far as what venues, it all depends. I've used classical, I've used hard rock, I've used hip hop, I've used rap. Sometimes a character, I'll use a certain song with them. And a lot of times, like I said earlier, the character kind of takes control. And I
Yeah.
almost feel like the character is like guiding my fingers, like over my shoulder, going, do this, and here's the music I want to hear. And I kind of let that take over. Again, not to sound mystical or anything, it's very psychological, but let that character take over and let me just kind of lose myself in that character. And that character will tell me what kind of music they like,
Mhm.
and what music would affect that scene that they're in.
Right.
So, but yeah, it varies. I'm always intrigued by people like I just use classical or I just use, alternative or I just use rock. I'm always intrigued by that because I feel like you limit yourself.
Yeah.
I think your music palette should be wide open.
Right.
So,
No, I know exactly what you're talking. I mean, I'm like primarily a classic rock fan, but like if I'm like writing a certain scene, like no, I need to listen. Like I find like there, it might be instrumental, might be something else. Like no, I may even play a song over and over and over again as I'm
yeah,
writing the scene because I like the music, how it swells in this
yeah,
moment, and
I've
like
done that many
I
times.
need
Yeah.
this right now.
I've
You know?
burned myself out on songs. Well, I had I'm writing a story, and again, I write these stories and I shelve them because I'll reach a point. I'm like, okay, I can't, like, I'll get block, so I'll put it
Yeah.
on the shelf for a while, and then I might start a different story. But I have a story that I'm working on where there's a barroom scene, a barroom fight, and I just couldn't get it right. And then I heard this song called Timber. I don't know if you heard it.
Yeah. I think yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I thought about that song as I'm writing the fight scene. This comedic angle is
Hmm.
showing up, and not only did it affect the scene, but I gave the character kind of this almost cynical, satirical kind of perspective of the world based off of that. So it's
Yeah.
funny how music can really kind of remold things for you.
For
So,
that certainly. Yeah. Um. Well, we're gonna. I'm really excited for you. We're gonna shift gears here in a second, but I am really excited to have this coming out for you. I know it's already you can get it on Amazon. You can get. I was looking on all sorts of retailers.
mhm.
That's really cool. I'm wishing you nothing but the best as this
Thank you.
rolls out.
I'm hoping the
Uh,
ebook comes out soon. We've got an ebook and audiobook. The paperback is available online. Like you said, Amazon, Walmart, Barnes& and Noble, Books A Million, the normal places. You can find it on Goodreads. I'm hoping the ebook is going to come out in the next couple of weeks because I think a lot of people have switched to ebook. I like a book in my hand. I like having the book
yeah,
in my
yeah.
hand and being able to read it and all that. But a lot of people have gone to ebook or because their schedules do audiobook while they're driving. So I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to those coming out. So.
Yeah. And speaking of that, that must be really cool to have like your book in your hand like that.
Oh,
That's
it's
awesome.
surreal. It's surreal. It's funny because when I self-published, I remember having it in my hand. That was like that moment, right? But
Hmm.
when you're fully published and you have it in your hand and you're seeing the completed cover, and it's such a great feeling because it's something tangible. When you're
Yeah.
writing, it's not tangible,
Yeah.
but when you
Exactly.
have it in your hand, it's like, oh, this is tangible. So, but
Right.
yeah, it's great. And most of the time when I write these books, I don't keep my own copy. I end up giving them all away or selling them. So
Hmm.
I have one copy from my last two books, the original Lost Road to Hope, which is my self-published, and the Crux, which is also now being published. So those are packed away. So, but I was very glad to have this because I love the cover, and I loved just the way it was laid out, much better than what I had done with my self-published by yards and measures. Crimson Cloak Publishing did a phenomenal job with it, so they really
Right.
did.
That's awesome.
So,
Well, we are about take a sharp left turn. We
okay.
we are we're on the way. We're about less than 2 months away from the third Nerd Fest, and March 21st, same place, Rock Hill Sullivan Middle School. Um, have you enjoyed the past few that you've been a part of? You guys have been
Yeah, I've been
helping
to
us out,
two.
been there.
Yeah,
You've
it's
been the
been
past two.
fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. The first one we did, you guys were nice enough to have us. We were promoting the film, had a lot of
Hmm.
interest in the film. And then we did some green screen photos for some of the cosplayers that came out, and I thought they came
Yeah.
out really well. The second year you guys did your first cosplay contest, and I think we had 5 or 6 people, but it was still a lot of fun. Everybody had a
Yep.
great time. Actually, I think we had 12, man, 12, 10 or 12. But anyway, So I'm really looking forward to this year because it just seems like every year it grows more and more. Great
Yeah,
assortment of vendors. I've found some phenomenal deals there myself.
yeah,
And I mean, you guys run a great show, period. It just, you're always accessible, always willing to help. I love the location. I'm hopefully that you outgrow that location as you get bigger, but it's a nice location. It's right in the middle of just both housing and businesses. So you've got a good traffic flow. So it's been a great experience. I appreciate you allowing us to be there.
yeah. Of course, and we've loved having you, and hopefully there's no pressure that like you're speaking to one of like the someone who helps run Nerdfest. You didn't feel
Oh
the need
no.
to.
No, I love no,
We
I
turned
love
off. You're like, I
yeah,
hate
no.
Nerdfest.
No, I love there's only we don't do as many cons anymore, so we typically do yours and about three or four others where we do the
Hmm.
photo booth and we do the cosplay contest and stuff. And I don't like if people come to me. I've had people come to me at their shows going, "Hey, can you do it?" I'm like, "No, I've got my shows."
Right.
We'll come and advertise the book or talk about the movie, but I really enjoy that because it's kind of like giving back. I feel like it's giving back
Yeah.
something to the community, both the con community, because that's the con community is really where I got my start in publishing, I mean, in not publishing, but putting out my films and my shows and this stuff. So, the con community has been a huge part of promotion if you use it
Yeah.
right. So, I like giving back, and you and Tim and Lauren and Derek, you guys are amazing. So, I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys.
Yeah. No, and I know that Derek and Tim have learned a lot just by like observations with other great people who run cons in the area. Whether it's like I know like Chris puts on a great con with like the alternate, like kind of like newer alternative
Yeah, Chris
locations that
Rigo,
he's
yeah,
done.
he's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
really
Beardy
cool. Like
Weirdies. Yeah,
the breweries, and we've learned a lot from like Dave, and of course the other great. Here's a problem you run into when you start listing people. You forget to list somebody, and then that person's like, "Oh, I didn't say me." There's a
yeah,
ton of great
yeah, yeah,
people, whether it's Heroes Con or all sorts
yeah,
of the great cons in the area, that we've learned a lot from.
yeah.
You helped judge the cosplay contest. So what is the like? I guess what stands out to you when you're like judging cosplay? Like, is there something like, oh, this is a really good?
Yeah,
Because I think
so
everyone does great. Everyone, because you never want to hurt
yeah,
someone's feelings. If you get up there and you're like, I'm putting myself forward, you deserve all the praise.
right. I
Um,
always do a speech before every cosplay contest, and
mhm,
people have heard it a million times. I hate cosplay contests because I am not a participation award person at all. I hate participation awards, but when it comes to cosplay, a lot of people who do cosplay are introverts, and the only way
mhm,
they come out of their shell is through cosplay. I've seen that. A lot of people use cosplay as almost self-therapy
yeah,
to get over things, and there's such a love for these characters they're portraying, and it's such an escapism that even when somebody shows up in a Party City costume, but they really embody that character, I'm impressed. But the two things that always stand out, depending on the con, is the craftsmanship. When we see these
mm,
really like art forms. These cosplay become little art forms, and the ownership of the character. So, like
right,
I said, if somebody's just like you could tell that is they love that character, and they are just portraying it with all they are, and you see that escapism, and you see that that's that kind of moment where whatever they're going through, they get kind of that moment of relief,
right,
and it's you feel like it almost feels like a giant exhale, you
hmm
know. And so that's what impressed me the most with cosplayers. And to see someone who's timid, who's shy, who may have even been bullied, to come out and perform on the stage and give it their
yeah,
all, that's a win. That's a
yeah,
huge win. And I'm not an SJW. I'm not woke at least, but you know that. But I do see that energy expelled and
hmm
that sincerity. There's a sincerity in it that you don't see in other things.
yeah,
And I don't think artists and actors and studios appreciate nearly as much or enough how some of these characters really have an impact. We can't fly. I am not a billionaire who can build weapons, but I can be a person who fights for truth, justice, and the American way. I can be a selfless person. I can take a trauma and make its triumph. I can find hope in darkness. These are traits that heroes have that we can adopt. And I think that's what Hollywood's forgotten. That those are traits they need to focus in on. That's why when
right,
I grew up, Superman was the biggest thing, and then it transferred to Batman. But when I see a cosplayer really just kind of just fall in love with the moment. That's a big deal for me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think what I have liked in recent years too is like there has been, I think, a lot of opportunities for people who maybe can't find struggle to find a place or maybe are more introverted. They have been was like, oh, I see myself in this character and I'm able to dress up as this person and I feel at home. And that's what's great about cons in general is like I don't care if you participate in the cosplay contest or not, but if you want to take some time and you want to come to Nerdfest or whatever show and dress up and just be around, or just put on a t-shirt that's like, hey, I like this, and you can be around like-minded people and
yeah.
just have fun. That's
It's
what
the
I love about these
tribalism.
cons.
It's
Yeah.
a tribalism. I mean, there can be good tribalism, bad tribalism, but it's
Yeah.
that place you can go where you're not judged, where you can just enjoy your fandom, because when we're at a 9 to 5 and you start talking about why you love Pokemon
Hmm.
to somebody, they kind of look at you side-eyed. But when a con, you could have conversations about Pokemon all day long and everyone is as excited about it as you are. And
Right.
that's
You can
really cool.
immediately see
Yeah.
somebody and know, like, okay, they're gonna have a favorite superhero. I can go up to somebody and say, "Who's your favorite superhero?" and they can immediately have an answer. Versus
Yeah.
like if I'm at my job or whatever, and I say, "Who's your favorite superhero?" they might look at you like, "I don't know."
Yeah. Right.
It's
And
it's
you've
fun.
done Spider-Man before, right, Tyler?
I've done Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I've done a Riddler before. Done a couple of things here and there.
But
So
the thing is, what got me into cosplay, I mean, I've done paid events, but the charity events is what I love is when you're at a con or an event and I'm at Batman. I mean, I haven't done Batman in a while because I need to lose some weight, but um and a child looks at you and you're giving the whole performance. Like when I'm in Batman, I'm Batman. I don't break character.
yeah,
And that child sees Batman.
right,
Sometimes that adult sees Batman, and for a second, all of their troubles wash away and they get to enjoy that moment. That's a huge, that is a huge humbling moment for you.
right,
It's an honor and a privilege to be part of that moment. And, to know that with that little boy that I gave him joy in the last hours of his life, um, that's not something I brag about. That's something I thank God about, that I was privileged to be part of that and blessed to be part of that. And given the opportunity to play a part of that. So cosplay, a lot of people make fun of it, but it has its purpose and it can do a lot. I mean, at a con, it's a Disney World experience. You know that.
yeah,
You go to any con and all of a sudden, oh, there's Spider-Man, oh, there's Batman, there's Superman, there's My Hero Academia, there is Attack on Titan, there is, K-pop Demon Hunter. Those characters are there where you
yeah,
don't see them in real life and you get to take your picture with them and you get to interact with them. That's a really cool experience. It really
yeah,
is.
and
So,
it's a great place to just have fun. We've talked about this before. When we've been promoting Nerdfest, so like there is an escapism to it.
yes.
We could all uh, talk about whatever, politics or however, and like come to disagreements and all that. And it's so many people tune that stuff out because it's like, I mean, it's stressful, but like we can come to the con and just have fun,
Yeah.
just have a good time. Not that other stuff isn't important. Of course, it's super important, but like for a little bit, we can all just kind of be
Well,
part of this
it's
group.
sanctuary for a moment. It's sanctuary for 6 to 8 hours
Yeah.
where you can close out the world. You know, have it or else you explode. And especially in these times, it's
Yeah.
incredibly important. And that's what it is. It's that what do they call those chambers? You go in where there's no sound or sight. It's like a dark chamber, and you go in
Oh
there.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? I know
Hmm.
but it's that kind of thing. It's like you can literally block everything else out and you get to be one with something you really enjoy and share that, unlike that chamber, share that with other people of like-minded. And the stuff does wash away. I really hate when the politics infect cosplay groups or con groups. I
Hmm.
really think that cosplay groups and con groups say, you know what, no matter what, that stuff stays out. Under all
Yeah.
circumstances, it stays out. Let's just be
Right.
human beings for like a
Yeah.
couple hours. And we need that more than ever right now. So,
Exactly. Well, as we're talking about Nerdfest and 2026 is our third Nerdfest. I'm not a huge resolutions person per se. The only reason I'm not a huge like, oh, this is my 2026 resolution is because like I think you can start a resolution whenever. I think sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to start this January 1st, and then if people fall off, they're like, oh, well, there's next year. I think you can
yeah.
start a resolution in February,
Yeah,
in
100%. Yeah.
March. Like I
Yeah.
just, you see Planet Fit, like I go to Planet Fitness, you see the numbers spike in January, and then you
Yeah,
see it
of
slowly
course.
go down.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, of course.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
but do you have anything that you feel like maybe we don't have to put a label as a resolution, but anything like you're trying to be like more intentional about going
Yeah,
forward?
so yeah, a couple things. I think one of the boring thing is I'm trying to lose weight. I was down to 190 and I'm back up to 240. So, and that's because I work remote. I sit too much. I need to be out exercising, eating better. And was doing really well too. I'm really ticked off at
Mhm.
myself. But I think the biggest thing for me is really being there for my kids who are becoming adults and evolving just not into just the not trying to evolve into the friend mode, but staying dad mode because this is
Yeah,
when they need dad mode the most. And being a better husband. The older you get, the more you realize that you spend a lot of your life moving around unnecessarily
yeah,
or distracting yourself. And you've got this person. I mean, I've been married 30, I think it's now 34 years. And I find myself falling in love with my wife every day more and more. But I look back and I'm like, man, I could have been better at paying attention and
mhm,
giving my wife a little more time. So now that the kids are grown and they're kind of beginning to live their own lives, now is the time where I can kind of make up for a lot of that.
yeah,
And even with the book writing and the movie making and stuff, finding time for her. But I really do want to get kind of contradictory. I want to get, I think I have another book coming out next year. I want to get at least one feature film done a year. That's my goal.
right. That'd be great.
And if I can't do that, it is what it is. But I really would like to put out one feature a year, a good feature a year,
Mhm.
because I'm 54 now, and I think I got about probably 16 more good years, and I want to make sure I use those to the fullest.
Right.
So I know that covers like a really big
No,
gambit, but
yeah, that's a lot. I mean, it's
yeah.
we have lives are complicated. We've got personal lives, we got professional lives. I want to touch on and not to get, we usually don't get super deep on here, but like I remember when I got married, one of the best pieces of advice I got, and I still struggle with this, is like at no point people say like, oh, marriage is 50-50, but like there's different phases. Like sometimes one person needs more attention than the other. It feels like 80-20
Uh-huh.
or 40-60 or whatever. And I do try to think, and this is something I need to work on, is just like whenever I do anything, like I have a lot of interest, but whenever when Tim and I do a con, that's a lot of fun. But then I think about, okay, my wife is at home. Or when I'm doing this, this is an hour that I take and I got to
Mhm.
edit this and all that. And then she's doing something else. So like it takes a lot of intentionality, and sometimes it's not intentional, right? It's just like I'm doing stuff and I'm having fun doing my stuff. But then you remember like, oh shoot, like we both work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. We both get home by like 5:30. We hang out for 3 hours and then it's bedtime. It's so
Yeah.
hard, you know, finding that time to make sure
Hmm.
we're all busy.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. So I heard a pastor once say, it's always been the expression spend quality time, not
Mhm.
quantity. I disagree, and I agree with this one pastor who said it's quantity. So I think being present, in other words, every moment you can spend with your spouse, spend it. So
Mhm.
even when you're busy, if it's just sitting down and watching a show together, if it's maybe sitting in bed and talking, if it's putting down the phone and having a conversation, I think the biggest thing is being as present as much as possible,
Right.
not putting some narrative limit on it or agenda, but every time that you've got that free moment, you're taking that time management and putting it toward your spouse. I think
Yeah.
is the key. And really taking them seriously. I tell my wife I love her constantly. I always try to say something very, to compliment her in some way every day because there are days that I know she's not getting it from work or whatever. And the
Mhm.
sincere compliments. I'm not talking about some just, blase,
Right.
but that's I think how you do it. And the hardest part, I think you and I know, especially with ambitious people like myself, is putting your spouse first. It's very
Yeah.
hard
Hmm.
because you're not doing intentionally not doing it because you don't consider your spouse boring. But when you're driven and you have like purpose, you can sometimes forget that the reason why you're doing all this stuff is for your family.
Right.
Like Dr. Charles Stanley, a world famous minister, is divorced because he became so involved in his ministry that his wife was lacking. And he would argue, well, I was doing God's work, but marriage is God's work too. So,
Right.
you got
Yeah.
to find that I think
Yeah.
presentism, like you said, that intentionality, presentness, and and focus and not making excuses,
Yeah,
for bad behavior. So
for sure. And then on my end, one thing I'm trying to do also intent, 2026 wise, I guess, is I find myself like there's a lot of things I like to do, but I worry that like there's so many things that I don't know if I like. My mind is in so many different places. I've got my teaching job. I like to run. I like to write. I like to read. I like to read comics. I like to do this. And there's so many things, but then like I almost like your hands become so full that some things slip out.
yeah.
So I want to become like I guess more balanced at doing those things. 'Cause I
Hmm.
don't want to like drop the ball and then do like none of it well.
Yeah.
There's no
I
easy
think
answer to that. We
no, I
don't
think
have
the
a
key is the biggest piece has to be your spouse and
yeah.
your family. And that's the
Hmm.
hardest part because you find them
Yeah.
getting smaller and smaller, but you got to keep them because if you're not doing it for them, then you got to ask why you're doing it because I'm
Hmm.
doing it because I want to leave a legacy for my family. But even that can become selfish
Yeah.
and it can become an excuse. So it's hard. You're right. It's hard managing that, but that's the work of it. That's why everyone's like, marriage is a piece of paper. No, it's not. Marriage is this earnest work to bring two people as close together as they possibly can and being more than yourself. Well, you can do
Yeah.
that without a contract. Forget the contract. It's that commitment to each other that I'm
Yeah.
saying I am locking in with you
Yeah.
with the idea that there's a consequence if I break that commitment.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
was
what marriage should be.
I was, and this became like a fun rabbit hole, kind of deeper rabbit hole for us. But I was at a friend's wedding last month, and I was talking to some of the guys, the best men, and I was at the groomsmen. I was like, I really hate. Sometimes you hear people be like, "Oh, last day," like the day before the wedding, or like
Yeah.
ball and chain. I'm like, do you want to get married?
Yeah.
I'm like, why would you say like I don't know, like I actually like my wife. Like it's so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find those kind of like I get they're joking, but it's so or like people like, oh, my wife's out of town. I can have fun. I'm like, I don't know, I miss my wife and I don't see her. I
Yeah.
don't know about you guys, but it's like,
Yeah,
is
there's
that
you have to maintain levels of your own individuality. That's true because you don't want your wife to become a mirror of you or you a mirror of her. But if your relationship is a chore, like you said, that's a problem. Most likely it's your problem. It's not
yeah.
their problem because uh, you know, you know, we're very simple creatures. We want to be fed, right? We want to sleep. And I think the two things that men most want is respect and peace. I think that's trumps everything. Women want to know that they're valued and that they have value and priority in your life. I think that's really in 34 years of marriage, I feel like that's my biggest thing for my wife is knowing that she takes precedence.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to learn that. Still learning it. But I think that's really what it is. Women just want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're priority. They want to feel like they're cared for. They may not admit it, but women do want to be cared for.
Mhm.
Not they don't want to be. I'm not belittling women to be like children, but they want to be cared. You can be an adult and be cared for. I mean, we care
Yeah.
for our parents, but I really think that's what it is. And I think when you hit that, when a woman feels loved in that way, I think that commitment lasts.
Yeah.
When a
Well,
man
and
feels
I
like his wife is peace, that also makes a woman
yeah.
relationship last.
Well, I think you both on both ends. I mean, me as a guy, I want to be cared for. We all want like that home base too, where it's just like, man, I've had a really rough day, and but I've got this person I can come back to,
Yeah,
and it's been tough, but like this is my person,
right.
and I can, you know, I'm the whole. Sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes it's 80-20, but like we're
No,
there
you're right. I
as a
like the way
team.
you said that because you can't, it's not 50-50, 100-100. You're right. It shifts. What
Hmm.
needs to be is that you are available,
Hmm.
you're intentional, and you're present. And a
Yeah.
present and available are the same thing, but no, because you could be available, and not be present. You need to be present in the moment. Like you're
Right.
not just doing something as a task, that
Yeah.
your whole entity is involved in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we covered a lot of ground today. This has been one of the deeper episodes of this, but this is fun. This is why I like doing this because like I like having conversations with people. So this is fun. I'm really excited for Nerdfest coming up in a couple weeks
Me too.
or 2 months, I guess. And I'm also excited for your book, The Last Road to Hope,
Mhm.
which is available in multiple forms, multiple places you can buy, and we'll include links. But Ron, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your
Thanks for
friendship,
having me.
and we're
Yeah,
definitely looking forward
absolutely.
to seeing you
My pleasure.
at Nerdfest on
Yep.
March 21st.
See you then.
Yay! Coming!